Some pain lives so deep in the human heart that words can never touch it. Only music has the power to reach those places where grief dwells, where love persists despite loss, where hope struggles to survive in the darkness. Simon Cowell had witnessed every kind of heartbreak on the Got Talent stage, but nothing could have prepared him for the woman who walked onto the stage that October evening, carrying herself like someone who had learned to breathe around a permanent ache in her chest. Her name was Rachel Adams, and she was 35 years old. She moved with careful grace, each step measured and deliberate, as if sudden movements might shatter something fragile inside her. She wore a simple black dress with a small silver angel pin on her collar, and her brown hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her hands trembled slightly as she positioned herself at center stage, clutching a tiny white blanket that seemed almost luminescent under the bright lights. The audience applauded politely, but there was something in Rachel's bearing that immediately commanded a different kind of attention. She didn't smile or wave. She simply stood there, looking out at the crowd with eyes that held depths of sorrow so profound they seemed to make the entire theater feel smaller, more intimate. Simon sat at the judges' table, his usual confident posture shifting immediately. 20 years of experience had taught him to recognize when someone was carrying more than just performance nerves. This woman was carrying something that had fundamentally changed her, something that had carved out spaces in her soul that would never be filled. The host approached with his customary warmth, but even he seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. There was something about the white blanket in Rachel's hands, something about the careful way she held it, that suggested this audition was going to be unlike anything they had seen before. "Welcome to Britain's Got Talent. Please tell us your name." "Rachel Adams," she said, her voice clear but carrying an undertone of carefully controlled emotion. "I'm from Manchester." "And what brings you here tonight, Rachel?" Rachel's grip tightened on the small blanket she held. When she spoke, her voice remained steady, but there was something underneath it, a pain so deep it seemed to emanate from her very bones. "8 months ago, I gave birth to my son," she said quietly. "His name was Oliver James Adams." The use of past tense hung in the air like a physical presence. The audience immediately fell silent, understanding instinctively that they were about to hear something profound and heartbreaking. "There were complications during delivery," Rachel continued, her voice beginning to waver slightly. "He was born not breathing. The doctors worked for 43 minutes to save him. For 10 minutes. 10 beautiful, perfect minutes. He lived. I got to hold him, to look into his eyes, to tell him how much I loved him." At the judges' table, all conversation stopped. One of the judges, a woman, brought her hand to her mouth, tears already forming. The theater had become so quiet that even the air conditioning seemed too loud. "He was perfect," Rachel said, her voice breaking slightly. "He had his father's nose and my eyes. He had the tiniest fingers I've ever seen. And for those 10 minutes, I was a mother. Really and truly a mother." She held up the white blanket, her hands now shaking visibly. "This is the blanket they wrapped him in. It still smells like him. It's all I have left of my son." Simon stood up slowly from his chair, not with his usual dramatic flair, but with the quiet recognition that what was about to happen required his complete presence and respect. He didn't walk onto the stage. He simply stood where he was, waiting. "What will you be performing for us tonight?" the host asked gently, his own voice thick with emotion. "A lullaby," Rachel replied, pressing the blanket to her chest. "The one I sang to him during those 10 minutes. The one I sing to him every night when I go to his nursery. I know he can't hear me anymore, but a mother never stops singing to her child." The host nodded, clearly moved beyond words. He stepped back, leaving Rachel alone under the bright lights with nothing but her grief, her love, and the tiny blanket that represented everything she had lost and everything she would never stop cherishing. Rachel closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, there was something different there. The grief was still present, but alongside it was a fierce, protective love. The kind of love that mothers feel for their children. A love that death cannot touch or diminish. She began to sing a cappella. No backing track, no accompaniment. Just her voice, pure and clear and filled with all the love a mother could pour into 10 minutes of holding her child. Hush now, my angel. Close your sleepy eyes. Mama's gonna sing you a lullaby. Her voice was beautiful, trained, professional. But that wasn't what made the audience sit in stunned silence. What transfixed them was the emotion behind the voice. The sound of someone singing not for applause or recognition, but for love. For a child who would never hear another lullaby. Stars are dancing in the midnight sky. Time for little boys to say goodbye. Rachel sang with her eyes closed, swaying slightly, as if she were back in that hospital room, holding Oliver, making the most of 10 precious minutes that had to last a lifetime. The tiny blanket was pressed against her heart, and everyone in the theater understood that she wasn't just singing to an audience. She was singing to her son. At the judges' table, there wasn't a dry eye. The other judges had stopped pretending to take notes and were simply watching, transfixed by the raw power of a mother's love transformed into music. In the audience, people were crying openly, many thinking of their own children, their own fears, their own understanding of how fragile and precious life really is. Though your time with Mama was so brief and small, you're the greatest love I've known at all. Simon began walking onto the stage, not interrupting, just needing to be closer to this moment. He stopped a few feet from Rachel. His own face wet with tears he made no attempt to hide. This wasn't about judging talent. This was about witnessing something sacred, the sound of love that survives even the ultimate loss. Sleep now, sweet Oliver, in heaven's embrace, till Mama sees your precious face. Rachel's voice broke on her son's name, but she continued singing through her tears. She sang about promises that mothers make to children they'll never see grow up, about love that doesn't end when life does, about the way a mother's heart keeps beating for a child who will never take another breath. And though my arms are empty, my heart is full of you, Oliver. My angel Mama will always love you. As she sang the final notes, Rachel's voice soared with a power that seemed impossible given the weight of what she was carrying. She was singing her love across the boundary between life and death, between the hospital room where she held her son and the stage where she honored his memory. The song ended, and for a long moment, the theater remained in absolute silence. Rachel stood with her head bowed, the blanket pressed against her chest, tears streaming down her face. Then Simon began to applaud, not the quick professional clapping of a judge, but the slow, respectful applause of someone honoring something greater than entertainment. The other judges joined him, then the audience, until the entire theater was on its feet, in what felt less like an ovation and more like a prayer. Simon approached Rachel, his voice thick with emotion when he spoke. "Rachel," he said, and his voice cracked on her name. "What you just shared with us, that wasn't a performance. That was the most powerful expression of love I have ever witnessed." He looked out at the audience, then back at Rachel. "You asked if Oliver can hear you. I need you to know something. Every person in this theater just heard you singing to your son. Every person watching at home will hear it. Your love for Oliver, your voice singing to him. That's not something that ends. That's something eternal." Rachel looked up at him through her tears, still clutching Oliver's blanket. 10 minutes, Simon continued. 10 minutes with your son, and you've created something that will touch millions of people. You've shown us what a mother's love really is. You've honored Oliver in the most beautiful way possible." Without hesitation, Simon walked to the golden buzzer and placed his hand on it. "This is for Oliver," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the theater. This is for every mother who has ever lost a child, but never stopped loving them. This is for love that doesn't need time to be complete. He pressed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti fell from the ceiling like gentle snow, the lights turned gold, and the music played. But the atmosphere wasn't celebratory. It felt like a blessing, a recognition of something holy that had been shared. Rachel collapsed into the chair that someone had brought for her, overwhelmed by emotion. She clutched Oliver's blanket and whispered, "I love you, baby boy. Mama loves you so much." The audience continued their standing ovation, but it was reverent, respectful. The kind of applause reserved for moments when ordinary people do something extraordinary, when pain is transformed into something beautiful. After the cameras stopped rolling, Rachel remained on stage for a long time, surrounded by audience members who wanted to share their own stories of loss, their own understanding of grief. Simon arranged for grief counselors to be available, understanding that Rachel's performance had opened wounds for many people. Before she left, Simon spoke with her privately. "What you did tonight," he said, "you've given other mothers permission to grieve, to love, to honor their children. You've shown the world that 10 minutes of love can be worth a lifetime." Rachel's audition aired 4 weeks later and became the most watched Got Talent moment in television history. But more importantly, it started a global conversation about infant loss, about grief, about the different ways love expresses itself. Rachel established a foundation in Oliver's name to support families dealing with infant loss. She continued to sing, using her voice to bring comfort to other parents walking similar paths of grief. And every night, she still goes to Oliver's nursery. She sits in the rocking chair they never got to use together and sings their lullaby. Because a mother's love doesn't end when a child's life does. It just finds new ways to express itself. Because that night on the Got Talent stage, Rachel Adams didn't just sing a lullaby. She proved that love is stronger than death, that a mother's voice can reach across any distance, and that 10 minutes of perfect love can create something eternal. That's not entertainment. That's the sound of a mother's heart, still beating for her child, still singing him to sleep every night for the rest of her life.